Can you remember a time when your day wasn't run by a clock? It's hard to imagine, isn't it? For most of human history, our lives followed a different rhythm. The sun rose and the day began. The sun set and we rested. Time was fluid, measured in seasons, in the length of a shadow, in the rumbling of a hungry stomach. It was a natural, cyclical world. Then that sound arrived. A sound that sliced through the morning mist and announced a new master. It wasn't the sun or the seasons. It was the machine. This is the story of that whistle and how its call reshaped not just our world, but our very idea of time, work, and life itself. It's the story of the Industrial Revolution. Our story doesn't start in a vast, noisy factory, but in a quiet workshop with a man staring at a kettle. Well, not exactly a kettle, but a crude, inefficient steam pump. It's the mid-1700s. For power, you had your own muscles, your horse, or maybe a water wheel if you were lucky. Power was tied to the land, to the river. It had limits. A Scottish instrument maker named James Watt saw something different. He wasn't the first to see steam push a lid off a pot, but he was the first to truly grasp its potential. He tinkered, he refined. He added a separate condenser, a simple-sounding fix that changed everything. Suddenly, steam power wasn't just a novelty, it was efficient. It was reliable. What created was a mechanical heart, a source of power that didn't need a river, didn't get tired, and could be built anywhere. He had, in effect, uncaged energy itself. And once it was free, it went looking for work. Its first stop? The booming textile industry. Before the steam engine, making cloth was a family affair. A cottage industry. Wool was spun into thread by a wife at her spinning wheel, and her husband would weave it into cloth on a handloom in the living room. They worked at their own pace. They were their own bosses. Their life was hard, but it was theirs. Now, imagine a single steam engine that could power hundreds of mechanical looms at once. You couldn't fit that in a cottage. So, buildings were constructed to house these new iron giants. They were called factories. And to work the machines, they needed people. That whistle was a summons. It pulled people from the fields and villages, promising steady wages. A new life. Families left the only homes they'd ever known and flooded into rapidly growing towns and cities. But the life they found was different. The factory clock, not the sun, now owned their day. The whistle told them when to start, when to eat, and when they could finally go home. The work was deafening, relentless, and often dangerous. The freedom of the countryside was traded for the discipline of the factory floor. Society was being rewoven, thread by thread, into a new, urban, industrial pattern. With factories churning out unprecedented amounts of goods, a new problem arose. How do you move all of it? And how do you get the raw materials, like coal and iron, to the factories? The answer came from that same steam engine, but this time, it was put on wheels. The steam locomotive. The iron horse. Early railways were small, used to haul coal from mines. But soon, visionaries imagined them crisscrossing the entire country. Suddenly, the isolation of towns and villages vanished. A journey that took days by horse-drawn carriage could now be done in hours. Mail, newspapers, people, and products moved at speeds that were almost unimaginable. The railway wasn't just a new way to travel, it was a revolution in connection and perspective. The world felt smaller, faster. This required stronger materials. The demand for iron and then steel exploded. The Bessemer process, invented in the 1850s, allowed for the mass production of cheap, high-quality steel. This steel built the railways, the bridges, the ships, and the very skeletons of the new cities rising into the sky. The whistle of the train was the sound of a nation being physically bound together with ribbons of steel. But we have to be honest. This progress cast a long, dark shadow. The cities that grew around the factories were often crowded, unsanitary places. Disease was rampant. The sky, once blue, was often choked with a permanent haze of coal smoke. Inside the factories, the human cost was immense. There were no safety regulations. A 14-hour workday was common. And perhaps the bleakest chapter of this story was child labor. Small bodies were useful for crawling under dangerous, active machinery. A child's meager wage could mean the difference between a family eating or starving. For millions, the factory whistle wasn't a call to opportunity, but the shriek of a taskmaster that consumed their health, their youth, and sometimes their lives. It was the sound of a world that, in its rush for progress, often forgot to be humane. It would take decades of struggle, of protests and reforms for the rights of workers to catch up with the speed of the machines. The age of steam has passed. The great factories have fallen silent. But the whistle, its echo is everywhere. We live in the world it built. A world of mass production, global supply chains, and urban living. The strict 9-to-5 workday? That's the ghost of the factory clock. The feeling that you're always on the clock? A direct inheritance from that first generation of workers who had to sell their time. In a way, that's the new whistle, isn't it? The notification, the email, the buzz in our pocket. A new kind of machine calling for our attention, shaping our days in ways we're still trying to understand. The Industrial Revolution taught us that technology is never just about technology. It's about people. It changes how we live, how we work, and how we relate to each other. That first whistle was a wake-up call. It forced us to ask hard questions about progress and what it truly means to build a better world. And those are questions we are still answering today.